It's week 4, and the Ravens have another big matchup this Sunday as they're set to travel to Arrowhead Stadium and take on their AFC West rivals, the Kansas City Chiefs. With both teams coming into this game sporting a 1-2 record, both teams and organizations will be fighting to get their record of 500 and avoid the dreaded 1-3 start, but inevitably, one of them will lose. Both teams need this win, and while I'm not going to get into the polarizing and unnecessary topic of who needs it more, at the end of the day, the team that loses this game will find it quite challenging to convince the rest of the NFL that they are legitimate Super Bowl contenders, regardless of the championship pedigree of one or the other being the NFL's highest scoring offense. There are serious concerns for both of these teams coming into this game, and even with Lamar Jackson playing at an MVP level every week, the Ravens find themselves with a losing record. We're going to go through some of the major problems the Chiefs could pose in this matchup for the Ravens, as well as some way the Ravens could not only win, but also restore some of the flock's faith in them at the same time. Let's get to it. Welcome in, everyone. This is Jordan with Ravens Flash Report, and as I stated in the introduction to this video, the Ravens will have their work cut out for them as they go on the road to a hostile Arrowhead Stadium filled with fans cheering on a team that, like the Ravens, has their back against the wall. So if you enjoyed this Week 4 preview, give it a like, subscribe if you're new around here for year-round Ravens content, and comment down below your final score prediction and your player of the game for either team. As we did last week, we're going to start by talking about what the Chiefs bring to the table for this game and where they could find success against this Ravens team. The first problem that the Ravens will be facing is the Chiefs' pass rush, who already have 6 sacks on the year through 3 games. Which it might not sound like a lot, but it's twice the amount that the Ravens have so far. Being led by guys like defensive end Chris Jones, defensive end George Karlaftis, and linebacker Drew Tranquill, the protection of Lamar Jackson is going to be a big question in this game for the Ravens' offensive line, which allowed 7 sacks in just the last game alone. Another concern that comes with the Chiefs' pass rush is not simply their ability to get to the quarterback, but their ability to disrupt plays in general. Just the 3 players that I mentioned before have combined for 5 sacks, 37 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, and 10 quarterback hits. Last year, Lamar was only sacked a total of 23 times, which actually tied his career low. The most Lamar has ever been sacked in a single season was actually back in 2021, where despite only playing in 12 games, he was sacked 38 times. This season, however, Lamar is well on his way to destroying that total. By being sacked 12 times in just 3 games, he's on pace for 68 sacks, which is the same amount Caleb Williams was sacked last year with the Bears as a rookie. Basically, expect the Ravens' offensive line to be a major point of emphasis for both teams in this game. Now, the second problem facing the Ravens in this matchup is the same thing that I just mentioned, but in reverse. The Ravens have a total of 3 sacks so far this season as a team. Tavius Robinson is the only Raven on the roster that will be playing in this game that has recorded a sack this season. Meanwhile, Patrick Mahomes has been sacked 6 times in 3 games, which isn't a small number, it's just half as much as 12. And the distribution of those 6 sacks is perfectly even, 2 sacks in each game so far. The problem is that I doubt that trend continues, because I doubt our defense will record 2 sacks in this game. As of right now, the Ravens are tied with the Philadelphia Eagles for 30th in the league in the sack production department. Their only saving grace is that they've been moderately successful at pressuring quarterbacks, being in the top half of the league in quarterback hurries, knockdowns, and QB pressures. The problem is that those stats, while potentially helpful, don't seem to be translating into sacks or even stops on defense. And if pressuring, hurrying, and knocking down quarterbacks like Joe Flacco and Jared Goff isn't working, it's definitely not going to be effective against a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, who has made a career out of completing passes under pressure, out of the pocket, on the run, and off script in nearly every single game. If the Ravens can't get Mahomes on the ground, or at least cause his throws to be rushed or errant, it isn't going to matter how many times they get into the backfield. The Ravens defense needs to make a statement in this game, particularly in the pass rush department. The third problem is one that most wouldn't think to be a problem between these two teams if they had met last week, and that's the Chiefs' run game versus the Ravens' run defense. Now, I'm not going to completely rehash all of the ways that the Ravens got beaten to a pulp by the Lions' running backs in Week 3, but with the timeline of Nnamdi Madubuike's return unclear, even less than the formidable run game that the Chiefs present could be effective enough to make a significant difference in this matchup. As of right now, Mahomes is still the leading rusher for the team, But with both Hunt and Pacheco showing flashes last week against the Giants, that dynamic could change quickly if the Ravens don't snuff out this weakness early in the game. The strength of the Ravens' offense, though, is what could potentially put them in the driver's seat for this game early on and throughout its entirety. The Ravens not only have the NFL's highest scoring offense, averaging 37 points per game, but they also have one of the NFL's most efficient big play offenses. Derrick Henry has rushing touchdowns from 28, 30, and 46 yards out. Both of DeAndre Hopkins' touchdowns are 20-plus yarders, and in fact, only 2 of the Ravens' 13 offensive touchdowns were scored by a player traveling less than 10 yards. Lamar currently leads the league in yards per attempt, air yards per attempt, and yards per completion, on top of our rushing attack averaging 5.3 yards per carry, which is 3rd highest in the NFL. Basically, what I'm saying is that the Ravens should have opportunities to score in this game, and so far, they've done that better than any team in the league, both on the ground and through the air. They're going to need to put this game out of the reach of the Chiefs from jump. Now, the Ravens defense may be second to last in the league with regards to points allowed, but they may be catching a break this week facing a Chiefs team that's averaging just 20 points per game. To keep everything on the level, the Chargers defense has allowed the 4th fewest points per game this season, but the Eagles are ranked 15th in that category, and the Giants are 24th, with both of those two teams allowing more points on average than the Chiefs actually scored against them. By comparison, the Ravens have faced the 4th highest scoring offense in the Bills and the 2nd highest in the Lions, who are both averaging 34 points per game or more. Yes, the Browns have the 30th ranked offense in points scored, but they're averaging 15.3 points per game, and they only put up 17 on us, which is less than 2 points higher than their average. So now you might be saying that the defensive we've faced so far aren't good, but excluding the Ravens games, the Bills have allowed an average of just 15.5 points per game, the Browns have allowed 13.5 points per game, and Detroit has allowed 24 per game. I'm not saying that this defense is going to be locked down or pitch a shutout in Arrowhead, but I think that the opponent that we are facing this week is not of the same caliber, offensively speaking, as the Bills or Lions. That also doesn't mean that we can only win against teams that have lackluster offenses, but considering the current injury situation on the Ravens roster and the less than stellar play calling, I do believe this defense has better games in front of them than what we've seen so far. Now, let's move on to my offensive and defensive breakout performers of the game. Last week we started with defense, so now let's talk about my offensive breakout performer, Derrick Henry. It's true that Henry has fumbled in each game this season, which is practically unheard of for him throughout his career, but with regards to both him as a player and the Ravens organization, I believe instead of shying away from these issues, they're going to instead try to correct them. Henry was once again underutilized in the Detroit game, but I don't think the coaching staff will make that mistake again this week. The Ravens need to do a better job at winning the time of possession battle, and the best way to do that is for Henry to get the ball 20 to 25 times a game. Not only do I see Henry having a plus 100-yard game, I also think he adds 2 touchdowns on top of it and no fumbles. I've seen more than a few people, Ravens fans no less, making comments that Derrick Henry is washed or that last year was some miracle anomaly. To those of you that feel this way, remember that you said this, and also remember that it's week 4. If Henry is washed while averaging 5.9 yards per carry behind one of the Ravens' worst performing offensive lines in recent memory, maybe we need to alter the definition of the word washed. As for my defensive breakout performer of the game, I'm going to say that it's Kyle Hamilton's turn to take center stage. He's had a couple of good games so far this year, but none where he's really taken over a game and showcased that he's the best defensive player on the field. I don't think that Hamilton will necessarily lead the team in tackles in this game, but I can see him forcing a turnover with either an interception or a forced fumble, and a couple tackles for loss, and a sack on Patrick Mahomes. They've tried to get him into the backfield on a couple of blitzes this year, and he hasn't hit pay dirt yet, but as one of the best blitzers from the safety position, I think it's time he gets his first of the season. I'd also like to add an honorable mention for offensive breakout performer, former Kansas City Chief wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins. The Ravens and Lamar Jackson are well known for trying to help players facing their former teams get a little payback. With how successful Hopkins has been for the Ravens in just 3 games, I can see them trying to give him a few opportunities to score against the team that he was with just last season. I don't necessarily think Hopkins is the type of guy to harbor any resentments against a team like the Chiefs, but I'm sure it's always fun to score against your former teammates, and it's always fun for the Ravens to put some salt in the wounds of the Kansas City Chiefs. This might sound like a hot take, copium, or even hopium, but I can actually see the Ravens winning this game by a couple of scores. I'm not saying this as an attempt to discredit the Chiefs or wishful thinking that their dynasty is already over, but the Chiefs have had a slow start for the past few seasons, and this year in particular, it really seems like they've taken a step back on both sides of the ball. I understand that they have their own injury issues at the wide receiver position, but Patrick Mahomes has looked very pedestrian through the first 3 weeks. He's completing under 60% of his passes, has only thrown 3 touchdowns, and while his rushing numbers are impressive even for him, his overall passer rating is an 83.4, which is almost 4 points below Tua Tagovailoa and less than 5 points ahead of recently benched Giants starter Russell Wilson. Lamar Jackson, on the other hand, is playing out of his mind to start this season, leading all quarterbacks in several categories. And while this Ravens defense may not be at the same level as the 2023 or 2024 defense just yet, the Ravens offense is firing on pretty much all cylinders with Jackson behind the wheel. And for what I've seen of this year's Chiefs team, I don't think they have the defense to stop our offense, or the offense to take advantage of our injured defense. Clearly, the Ravens aren't going to win every game this season, and I don't think they win out either. But I do think they walk out of Arrowhead on Sunday with a win. 35-21 Ravens. If you guys have enjoyed this week's preview, go ahead and give the video a like. I really do appreciate it. If you guys are new around here, don't forget to subscribe and let me see your final score predictions and players of the game down in the comments section below. As always, ladies and gentlemen, stay safe out there and go Ravens.